Welcome back to episode...
What is it, 4?
4,
Episode 4
Yeah.
of the Actually Nothing podcast.
Oh, dang, it's 4 already?
Yeah, dude.
Yeah, we're really
episode 4.
making it.
Did I miss 1 and 3? Or did I miss...
Maybe.
Yeah, you missed episode 1, and then you missed episode 3, the last one that Aaron and I did
Yeah.
together.
We did that last week. Sorry.
Okay, man.
Episode 4 of the Actually Nothing podcast featuring our guest today, Daniel Tabor.
I mean, is he a guest if he was already here last
No,
time?
I guess he's not really a guest anymore. You're not that
You're not a
important.
guest anymore.
Yeah,
Sorry, Dan.
unlike that regular that just keeps coming by.
Yeah, he's back, Daniel Tabor.
Back at it again with the white vans.
Oh my
boy,
God.
okay.
Jeez.
You're off the list.
All right. It was nice being a guest.
What are we talking about today, JP?
So we wanted to talk a bit about success today. You know, the definition of success, how we perceive success, and maybe what our goals are, short and long term, and every sort of small thing that goes around that.
Dan, do you have any goals you got set for yourself nowadays?
I'm trying to get to goal.
Okay, so you got... Well, that's a goal.
Yeah,
it
that's a
counts.
goal.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
That's a goal. It's small. It's
I'm
a
on a
short-term goal.
climb right now.
For all of our listeners,
We like
explain.
to play competitive video games, League of Legends, so Dan's on that grind. I'm on Overwatch, so I do that.
I suck at all video games, so I'm just not going to do it. I don't want to hate myself that much.
So what should we do first? Should we talk about...
So I think let's make it easy. Let's talk
Okay.
first about our goals, you know, short and long-term goals.
personal goals?
Yeah, I think that'd be a good starting point before we get into like how we define success, and then we can come back, you know, round right back to these goals and see like whether or not they play into how we look at success, right?
Okay.
So let's start with you, Aaron. You want to go
Me?
with let's go with your short-term goals.
Short-term goals. Well, I guess I fulfilled one of them by being employed in some fashion, right?
Yeah.
So that's...
Congrats are in
thank
order.
you.
Very good, very good.
I had zero income for about 8 months, but I got hired, so now I'm a coach for volleyball. That's pretty cool. So
Hey.
I'm starting plans for a long-term goal. Otherwise, I'd say like fitness goals that I have going on right now.
Yeah.
I'm working out a lot, 4 times a week, and depends. I don't think I'm aiming for any like specific. I don't want to put like I want to lift this much, so much as it is just like I want to get cut
Yeah,
and
sure.
look aesthetically pleasing. So
Ooh.
yeah, at least those are my 2 current short-term goals.
So we talked about athletic goals or fitness goals. We also talked about jobs and such like that, vocational goals.
Those are just the things that apply to me.
Yeah. Do you have anything else, like maybe hobby goals?
Honestly, this whole podcast thing has turned itself into a goal. Like, I don't know if it's so much of a thing as like I can definitively say I achieved it, but it's like an ongoing process. Cause I think I've told you guys before that like I like learning about things that I'm interested in. And after, you know, this whole thing kicked off and now that we're doing it, doing the whole process of editing and stuff, it's shown me how much there is to do, but it's like, even though it's all technical and stuff, it's really interesting to me. And I like actively learning how to do certain tricks like this or this. And yeah, so that's pretty cool. So, yeah, I'm gonna put in sound effects. Hey, Aaron, future Aaron, put in some cool things there. Okay, thanks. But yeah, like I'm learning how to manipulate the audio and learning how to become better at editing. So I guess those are. It's an ongoing goal that is.
Who's your
Getting better.
inspiration?
I've
Your podcast inspiration?
already shouted out them like a couple times. I sent a couple links to JP earlier, but the 2 biggest ones were Funhouse, which is one of the YouTube channels that I watch. They're like a gaming channel, but they're super funny and they have really good like insights and opinions on whatever topics that they're talking about. And then the other one is Super Mega. They've done like 100 something episodes right now, but they're kind of doing like what we do. Like they just hang out and talk, and they're a bunch of funny boys. Hey, if for whatever ungodly reason either of these 2 groups listen to this, please invite me. Okay.
Give us some love, please.
Please, Super Mega Funhouse, please hire me.
I think
Hey.
I think starting the podcast was actually in itself a very small achievement, because you and I talked about this earlier in the summer about how we both had wanted to start a podcast. And I mean, I've got similar aspirations of or similar like inspirations where I was listening to, the Unspooled podcast. That's a great one.
I saw you know how you brought out Endless Thread before?
Yeah.
I saw it like on a promoted thing on the top of Reddit. I was like, you talked about that.
Endless Thread, another great podcast by Boston's NPR show. What else? I listened to Sawbones, which is a really fun one about all of these different types of medical little phenomena all the way through history. That's a really cool one. And so I've just been listening to a lot of independently or otherwise podcasts, and they're really fun to listen to. And so I've always wanted to start one with you guys, just because of how we banter. And I think that we have really great communication and, conversation about certain things. And so I think this podcast in general is such a great achievement, even if it's this first one we do. Even to say that, our fourth episode is like this, it's pretty crazy, right?
Yeah, that we've even made it this far.
Yeah, and it's
come so far and got so far. Wait, that didn't make any sense.
No, you don't want to sing that.
It doesn't even matter.
Podcast.
Yeah, and I mean, Dan, could you ever say that you were going to be on a podcast at this point?
It just happened.
It just happened.
Yeah. So I mean, little achievements.
Man, that's
right?
just how life goes, right? Like, things just happen.
Ooh.
Am I already philosophizing too much?
We're getting there.
Dude, this whole podcast episode is going to be just like philosophy.
It's going to be a lot of philosophizing. And I think like for anyone who does listen, like I think it'd be really great to get your take on what we think about the definition of success, which we'll get to. And then also like what your short and long-term goals are as well. Mm-hmm. We'll get to like all of ours in a minute. I'd like to go on with my short-term goals. So I actually made a little bit of a list of mine. So like my immediate goals right now are to get a good GRE score.
Ooh.
As I'm preparing for more grad school. I want to pay off this laptop that I just bought.
Ooh.
And be financially fiscal.
Ooh.
Let's see, I want to be finished with both of my
financially fiscal.
Oh, financially fiscal.
Financially fiscal. That's like an album name. DJJP, financially fiscal.
We're getting into everything. I'll loosen up.
Finally fiscal.
But to finish both of my papers for grad school entry.
Okay.
To spend really responsibly too. That's now that I have more dispensable income, it's like I want to spend money.
Yeah.
It's kind of like now that I can spend on myself and think about myself, I want to do it more. But it's like you have to put the brakes on and just like have that foresight to look for delayed gratification, right?
I mean, isn't that kind of what you said before? Because you were like, when you first started the job, you're like, I think you told me word for word. I think you're like I'm spending like a slob. It's like,
dude, I am. It's
but I mean,
blowing money. I got like 3 watches recently. They're all freaking slick. I'm just like, dang, I need some more now. I don't know how many watches I need.
Wait. Can we talk for a minute about? Do you know, have you ever seen that meme that's like you order something on Amazon, you get it, it's like, oh my god, like now my existential terror is over for a minute as I wait for this thing. I know. It's kind of what it's like though. Like, waiting for these little noise canceling headphones. It's like,
it made your day.
Yeah, every day I was waiting for them was like, oh my god, just a little bit longer until my existential dread will just
Those are headphones for a minute.
No, they're not headphones. No, they're just noise canceling earbuds that
I think you said headphones.
I'm not trying to be pedantic. We invite you to be on this podcast. You don't have to be here if you don't want you to. What else
they
I got?
look like those freaking earbuds, man. You can put the earbuds.
I'm just gonna put them in. I'm gonna put this one in, and I'm just not gonna listen.
He doesn't have a dongle, so it's not an iPhone.
These are my Bluetooth noise canceling earbuds. Now I can't hear any of you. Yeah. And that's the point.
He's like in the last one, he's deaf, so he needs braille. That hasn't come out yet, but when it's up, I sound like such a fucking idiot, dude.
I kind of like going back and seeing what type of fuck ups we make during the cast. I think the deaf braille thing is gonna go up right next to me saying financially fiscal.
So I said in another one, do you know who Paul Revere is?
Yeah, this was good too.
He's the guy who called like the British are coming, right? And I said, who's the guy from World War I who did that? He's not from World War I. Oh, whatever. We already had that conversation.
We talked. Yeah.
World War I.
So what else? Oh yeah, my other. I have 2 more. One of them is to stop procrastinating. That's a really tough one because my natural inclination.
Lifelong goal.
It's tough, but it's also super immediate.
Years win.
Oh, heck no.
Did they lose? So this is like their 15th loss straight or something?
5th year.
For the uninitiated, my sister and I, the high school that we both attend, haven't won a football game in 5 straight years.
Oh wow, that's
Gee,
a
the
complete
grinds,
lack
man.
of success.
It's a complete lack of success.
I'm just trying to find out exactly how many games it's been now.
I don't know if they have 16 games in a season or some whatever. So
It's all right. High school football
16
doesn't mean
times.
anything unless you're going on to play in college.
Yeah, that's true. So you could say that like Elk Grove's short-term goals are to win a fucking game.
Yeah,
for
Yeah,
one,
that's a
but like
short-term goal.
They got a new coach and everything.
Oh,
Really?
they still
Yeah.
suck.
Oh, it
That's
sounds a
all
lot
the
like
first game of the
Illinois.
season,
We
right?
got freaking Lovey Smith.
first
and we're
game
still
of the season.
garbage.
That was the 3rd game.
Oh, no.
I mean, just like we're going to talk about later, failure is an important part of the
Yeah.
success process. So
5-year failure.
5-year failure is a very you can only
5-year
go up when you
plan.
hit super rock bottom. When you hit the bottom of the Marianas Trench like Elk Grove has, you can only ever go up.
Unless you like have a diamond pickaxe and keep going further down.
Yikes!
So,
The Minecraft
Yes.
reference.
hey man, I know Minecraft gets like a lot of trash, but it's a good game.
It is a good game.
I had fun.
It's the-
Screw
I don't
Fortnite,
understand
dude.
it.
I was all about the Minecraft Hunger Games, and that was Fortnite before Fortnite.
Minecraft Hunger Games
Yeah.
sounds intense.
It was because that was back when Hunger Games was big.
You see, I was about the Hunger Games.
Like
So
the movies.
Hungry Games?
Hunger Games. No, Hunger Games are the thing that we play every day.
yeah. you mean the
At
you
about
mean,
5 p.m.
you mean seeing the food and like wanting to eat all of it?
Yeah. Oh, dude. Okay. That's another fitness goal for me is like recently because I've been cutting super hard.
Okay.
Like, limiting the amount of calories that I have to intake every time I eat. That's like a goal.
It is a goal.
I try to limit it to be between 16 to 1800, and it's super. I mean, I can't do it every day because then I just go crazy. But like getting better at it, so I keep track of it. And
You ever try intermittent fasting?
yeah, I was thinking about trying that.
I'm
know
doing
it's
like
a thing.
I'm doing like a 14-10 split right now. It's actually really nice because you go to bed around if you go to bed at 10, you wake up at 8. It's like a great. It's like you wake up hungry and you can eat.
You know.
It's a fun split. Not really fun, but like it's easy to do it first, and then you can start doing like you can start with a heavier split, like a 12-12 type of split, and then a lot of people do the opposite split where they won't eat for 14 hours, but they'll eat for 10.
Yeah.
Or something else. Or an 8-16 is the one that I've been seeing a lot more recently, and that one's pretty crazy. I can't imagine not eating for 16 hours.
Fasting or like limiting how much you want to eat just sucks in general. That's one of the things why I didn't want to wrestle at all in high school, but I think I told you before that like the high school wrestling coach tried to recruit me
Yeah.
for one season or something because he was like, you seem like you have like a good body type to wrestle because like I'm short but I'm still like somewhat muscular, so
Yeah.
he was like,
Oh.
you're good, you'd be good at wrestling. And first of all, I don't really care about wrestling, and then second, my friends that were in wrestling looked miserable every day in lunch when they told me about like I can't eat because I have all this water weight or whatever. I was like, okay, I'm out, I can't do that. So
It's hardcore.
yeah, that's too much for me, dude.
Yeah, but like those type of fitness goals are like they sort of cross over into being both like immediate and then also long term.
Yeah.
Because like having an immediate goal or having a fitness goal implies that you want a longer term goal, that you want this like you want to achieve something on a long scale that requires these small little steps.
It's like practicing self-control now will help me do that much easier in the future.
Yeah, and I mean it's the same processes apply to like money. Where delayed gratification is probably the best way of doing anything, just because it gives you adequate time to look at what you have to use certain money for, or to look at what you really want to eat and what you want to spend all of those like extra calories on in a world of excess, right?
Got any other things?
Well, if we can circle back, I got
I'm
one
trying to
more.
send Jordan the link to the podcast.
Oh yeah, we got to get Jordan on this too.
Yeah, I'm in league with him right now.
Didn't we tell him we're shooting one now?
Yeah, dude, I just told him.
Nice.
I'm saying he's like,
Hey Jordan, you'll technically be on this one because we mentioned you.
Hey,
you're welcome.
Jordan's on it.
feature appearance this time. So I had no procrastinating. No practicing. Yikes.
That's the complete opposite of what you want to do.
No procrastinating, which is like a tough goal for me just because like the way I see it, sometimes I procrastinate. I procrastinate because I don't want to have to deal with negative consequences of doing something. So for instance, with these papers, I did not want to start working on them just because I knew that I had all these edits that I had to make. And I knew that they would take me a lot of time, and I was afraid to look at them because, like, this is my work, and to see someone's edits on my work and to question what I did, like, it's almost like a pride thing. And so I didn't want to look at it because I was afraid of, like, having the personal injury of
like
it.
criticism.
Yeah. Or it's the same as, like, not wanting to take full responsibility right away because you don't want to have to deal with a bad situation. So it's like a little bit more of an in-depth procrastination that I'm trying to combat right now. So in that one, I just want to get stuff done right away. I want to start on things early, like, and it requires that I do a lot of things different from my life, like, you know, go to bed earlier, wake up earlier.
That's the hardest.
Dude, I know, man. Like,
dude, I don't have to do that because I don't have work until like 4 p.m. But then I also go really late, so my sleep schedule is like way tilted towards whatever. But
you know, but sometimes like I don't have anything to do until like the late afternoons as well. Like sometimes, like on Thursdays especially, I don't work until later. But I feel like it's important for me to get up early because then I can get up. I can sort of look about what my day is going to be. I can prepare really well. And then I can also just like have everything on a very set schedule. And I won't feel like I've wasted a part of my morning. I think one of the worst parts for me about waking up at like 10 or so or 11 is like, you know, it's already noon and I haven't done as much as I want to. And then like past a certain evening hour, I don't want to do anything.
Do you have like a natural wake up time if you don't set an alarm? I know mine for a fact is like 1 p.m. Like I'll wake up on the dot almost every time if I don't set an alarm.
Damn.
Regardless of what time I go to sleep, like it could be like 3 a.m. or it could be like 12.
Yeah.
If I don't set an alarm, it'll always be 1 p.m. It's kind of weird.
Huh. I generally don't wake up past 8:30 anymore.
Yeah.
So like without an alarm, you know, regardless, I'll wake up around anywhere from 7:15 to 8:30. I can count on that to get me up in the mornings just because like if I'm up, I might as well be all the way up, you know? And nice. Can you insert that song like for a minute or a blip right there?
Get like C and D immediately for this.
But so like it's stuff like that, like wanting to get everything done like really like in the morning and early and having all of that just be right at the beginning so that I don't procrastinate or have time to procrastinate.
Okay. Got any more?
Yeah, and the last one I have is to read more and to use my phone a lot less.
What kind of reading?
You know, like
Books?
It's sort of just any type of reading for me at this point. I'd like to do leisure reading or like scholarly readings, anything to get me reading in a book, reading on paper, just because I feel like I've been tied to my phone a lot more recently. And one thing that really stuck with me lately was I was talking to my uncle, and he said that he was Uncle Michael, the professor of jazz at Auburn, a really great guy. He was telling me he had gone to a seminar about like how attention spans are totally different now because of the phones. Like if you consider all these like apps that let you browse social media, like it elicits a dopamine response because you're going through everything and you're finding things that are pleasurable to you one after the other. And so you're like having this habitual practice just becomes so embedded in your routine and you just keep wanting to do it. And it's like creating an addiction because you keep doing it, you keep getting that same response. And so like what I've noticed about myself is like because I use my phone a lot more, I feel like my attention span and my ability to be patient with certain things is just way lower. So like reading was difficult to start up again because like I want to know what happens now and I want results now because I'm so used to it. And so reading is like almost a practice for me in delayed gratification and having a narrative unfold. It's like watching a movie too, like just letting a full like artistic narrative just unfold by itself and you consume it in its entirety and you're forced to think about all of these things, you know? And so I think those two things, like the procrastinating thing and this whole idea of like reading more, come together in two ideas where I want to be a little bit more present and I want to be a lot more aware of what I'm doing and how I'm consuming types of culture.
Jeez.
And I think this comes to an important point that we wanted to talk about, which is, you know, how we look at achieving these goals and how we would talk about success.
Yeah.
So I think this is a good time to talk about like, you know, how we would define success. So like, what did we come up with, Aaron, together?
Well, earlier you sent me,
You prepared?
well, a little bit. We didn't like script the whole thing. Like we're still doing this on the fly. Like we're still hogging. But for what JP sent me earlier was his definition of success. So he wanted me to look it over and I pretty much came up with the same thing. So, well, at least the way that I worded it was success can be split into two categories where there's a subjective success, a subjective definition of success where that's what applies to you personally and, you know, doesn't take any input in from outside people because it's strictly what you want to achieve. Like, you don't need to account for worrying about other people's opinions on whether or not you hit this goal that you set for yourself, right? So that would be subjective success. And then the other part is objective success, where it's measured on some metric that was laid either by a group of people or is just like a common knowledge thing, like grades in school, You have F through A, and somewhere down the line somebody decided A is a measure of success, F is not successful, but everyone who is familiar with the system has conformed to it, so that objectively is something that people as a group try to achieve.
So this is important too in a way that we explain it, because objective and subjective success play into how I also define it in the same ways. So the subjective type of success really was important because you can see a lot of things around you as being like quantifiably successful. So the subjective success I like to call experiential, because it really takes on that personality subjective, as Aaron calls it, where it's like, what if someone's goals are to travel a lot? Or what if someone's goals are to have a family, to be happy? You can't quantify those things. And so having this type of success really depends on your own values and how it reflects on your personal values. And so this type of experiential success is limited only to things that you can experience and not count, right? And then the other one, objective success, is something that I like to describe as being quantitative. So like a quantitative amount of success, like grades, you're able to write them down, or like money per se, or degrees, or anything that can be measured is quantitative. And so these two types of success sort of go, they covers a large realm of what we can consider successful. And so like a lot of our short-term goals sort of cross the bounds between the two of them, where like having fitness goals, really requires that you have a quantifiable success in the present, and then you get experiential success in the future.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so, it's like, well, to make like an example of that for fitness, it could be like, I want to hit a certain body fat percentage, and that would be the objective success, yes, because that's a number that I could actually aim for. Whereas the other subjective success, like I said, is like, I'm looking for the aesthetics in my cut. So if I'm okay with my physical image that I achieve after working out for X amount of time, then that's cool with me. But that's like only my opinion, like, right? Yeah. Like, I don't care if the other guy working out across from me is like, the dude could have bigger biceps or whatever. Like, I don't care. If I'm okay with that, then that's like my success. Yeah. I might not necessarily be successful in the way that he wants to achieve his image. Like, we might be doing the same thing, but his idea of success for fitness might be completely different than mine. But as long as I'm okay with what I did, it doesn't matter about what other people think of that.
Yeah, screw those douchebags.
Gym bros, dude.
Jabronis.
Yeah.
This is also really important too, because the process, I think, requires a lot of both of these things and a sort of overarching idea and vision about what your long-term goal would be. And, having both the immediate objective and the long-term subjective goals are really important, because you have to see, I think it's important to see success as mainly a process of very small successes in the beginning, compounding on each other to create baby steps, and then you finally make a larger step. Like, a lot of success doesn't happen overnight. It doesn't happen as like chance or as luck all the time. A lot of people work really hard in the small term in order to make those big term leaps and to make those big term leaps possible. And so it's important to see how these two types of successes work together in order to create a great plan for overarching success.
So that should be, I think we could talk about that now then. We even I remember we had a conversation between the three of us actually before we even had this idea of the podcast taking off, but we were talking about a big success, which is like the absolute end game goal. And then we talked about before how like you have to break it up into intermittent steps. And one of the points that I remember I brought up before was that a lot of times, including myself, people only focus on the big overarching goal. And then they tend to forget that, in order to reach the big goal, you have to be able to overcome all the small challenges and take it step by step and achieve those small victories so that you can actually get to the end goal. Like, for example, when I was in college, everyone wants the degree at the end of the 4 years or however much time you need to take, right? But then people will only see the overarching goal as they either get their degree or they get a certain GPA, but then they tend to forget oh, I have to take like all these classes per semester, and then I have to do good in each of those individual ones, and then you can see each of those individual classes as smaller successes to create the bigger overarching success, which would be getting your degree and graduating.
And when you don't look at it as a step-by-step process, and you only see the big picture, it really makes the idea of long-term success super daunting. And it makes it almost unattainable because those goals are so far in the future and they're so giant, and it's almost like having to climb a mountain in one step.
That's also bleeding into your thing earlier that you were talking about. People want immediate gratification.
Yes.
And because for this case, people will think gratification will only come from achieving that big goal. They completely ignore the smaller successes that they make along the way, which, like you said, makes achieving the bigger one so much harder because they're like, well, why didn't it happen right away?
Absolutely. And I think that this idea of delayed gratification and how we don't really focus on it too much anymore is really important in our talk about success, because delayed gratification is really the whole process of being successful. Being able to delay gratification of a long-term success by having to struggle through multiple smaller successes, it's the cornerstone, really, next to hard work and perseverance. It's the sort of idea that if you keep going and you keep working at it, you can really achieve something greater by having this sort of delayed idea of success. But I think culturally right now, we're at a point, at least in my point of view, where I think we want everything right away, and we want to see everything right away. We want to see all of our successes manifest into something totally like relevant, something where we can base our entire life on it. We want to see all of these experiential and quantitative successes all right away, when we don't actually see them as part of the process.
Yeah.
And I think this is important because of how social media works and how I think about our perception of success on social media. Because I think social media really works on this idea of, you have a group of people who you've decided you want to like watch you succeed and achieve things. These are your like friends on Facebook or your followers on any other goddamn account. And you like selectively choose these people, and then you show them your achievements. You like put up all of these pictures of you traveling places, or hey, I'm so happy to be going to this like so-and-so school, or I graduated with this so-and-so degree. And it's a way of showing people all of your successes and jockeying for a sort of superiority position among them, or having them validate you in some sort of way. And I think that when you as a person go and you look at all of these continuous successes all over like social media, it seems daunting, and it seems like I should be succeeding this much as well. But in the whole like grand scheme of it, you may be in a totally different step as someone else. But what you're seeing is people, like a lot more people succeeding when you're not succeeding. And so it becomes so daunting, and it really shortens your idea of when you should be able to be successful, right? And I think that's almost totally responsible for the inability to be to have that sort of delayed gratification, right? It's really big for me, just because delayed gratification is such a big step to make, or such a big decision to have, or a big like opinion, or not really an opinion, but like to be aware of it as part of the entire success process.
Like to have the patience to know that that's like it's coming. But
yes, yeah, and like it's a part of society today, and a thing that we can view as social media, right? Mm-hmm. If we talk about, even my short-term goal of using the phone less, like having all of those little things, all of like these little like memes, even if you're scrolling through Reddit and you see all the memes that you've selected out of the subreddits.
Here's a meme conversation of the week.
Yeah, right. Here's our meme conversation. If we don't talk about memes,
it's not
if Aaron doesn't crack his voice at least once during a podcast, it's not a real cast.
Every single time my voice cracks at least once.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So like, even looking at all these memes and, seeing like, someone made this, or seeing all of these like things over the news, it can really, show us how daunting all of our personal successes are, and really discourage us from actually getting into it and getting into the nitty gritty of it.
Well, being discouraged from achieving a goal, aside from the fact that like that just sucks, I have a little point about that, where one of the, like I said, life quotes that I live by, I don't know if I've told you before, but I have little Post-it notes with inspirational quotes that I either wrote to myself, or like my sister wrote a couple of them, but I tape them on my mirror, and I have them with me starting from sophomore year in college, because like I know it sounds super dumb and it's like kind of cheesy, but it's like it actually helped me mentally. But one of them that I wrote was don't compare yourself to others. And that ties into you when you were saying, you know, you're seeing all these other people have success and they're all super happy. And then you're left wondering, like, how come the same thing's not happening to me? Well, there was a voice crack.
There it is. We did it. Okay, real cast right here.
But one of the things when I say don't compare yourself to others is because, you know, nobody's walking the same path. We all have our own respective journeys that we have to take, and maybe
everyone's got their own grind.
Yeah, maybe two people have the same end goal, but the way that they achieve that end goal and the steps that they take to get there don't necessarily have to be the same. Example A again, graduating college. You know, I know a lot of people who did college in 4 years, but I did mine in 4.5 years. And I know people who do it in longer, and that's perfectly fine. And people will be upset about it because then they start to compare themselves. They say, you know, oh, I didn't get my degree in 4 years. Something must be wrong with me, or I must not be as smart. But that shouldn't be relevant because you're not them, you know? Their success isn't your success. You're on your own path and you should only be worried about what you're doing. And I've told this to some friends before who, you know, they came to me and they said, like, you know, I'm kind of struggling, what should I do? And it's like, I don't know what to say to you, but something that'll help ease your mind a little bit. Like I said, just don't compare yourself to others, because once you start putting up this measuring contest of how am I doing compared to this other person, then you start to focus less on yourself and you focus more on other people. And then, like we said earlier, your eyes start to drift away from what's in front of you and you're only looking at what other people are posting. Because if you're only paying attention to what other people are doing and achieving around you, then you'll think that whatever you're doing in comparison is like worthless or it's not as good. And it should be good because, you know, you had the power in yourself or you had the will to do something, and maybe it's not objectively the same level of success as whatever they did, but it's a success regardless. You know?
Yeah, and two things that come out of comparing yourself to others for me that I see regularly is like, if you start comparing yourself to others, you sort of lose sight of your initial motivation. And that initial motivation is really what pushes you through a lot of these long processes. You know, like if you have such a strong and genuine motivation for some sort of project you have, it's always going to be good because, you know, if your motivation is true, you're going to want to do the best you can for it. And you're going to want to push out the best type of material you can muster. But, you know, comparing yourself to others gives yourself like, you want to be like this person. And then your only goal is to surpass that person. And then what else after that? You know, you're only finding targets. You're finding targets that are people to surpass. And you're not really giving yourself a true and genuine motivation for it. It's really like stepping on people in order to get some sort of like recognition or validation.
Yeah.
The second thing too is when you start comparing yourself to other people, I think it becomes a lot easier for you to resent the people that you're comparing yourself to, because it's almost like it's competitive then. And everything that they do is pitted against everything you do. And you need to be able to validate what you do against what they do. And so, you know, doing this sort of comparison sort of work, especially in artistic fields or in any field regardless, it has the propensity towards like making you resent that person and maybe straining a relationship that could be good if you didn't compare yourself to that person. And I think that's such an important thing, is to understand that your process is not their process. They might experience things at a different rate that you experience things, but as long as you stay on the path, you know, something my dad has told me so often is just like, as long as you have your goal in mind, you have that big long-term goal, and you even make baby steps towards, as long as you have that in your head, you know, you're always going to be on a good path. No matter what other, like who else is doing, or someone's doing this, or someone got this award, you know, you just need to stay like right on on a steady path, and everything else is just noise.
Yeah. I think one of the other cool things that should also be brought to attention, you know, like you said, when you compare yourself to others and it becomes like a contest of like who you can step on.
Yeah.
That's why I think it's particularly outstanding when you find somebody who's genuinely excited for success of other people. Like, I guess one of the biggest examples of that would be like Sportsmanship. There's a quote that's like, real recognizes real, or like hard work recognizes hard work, right? And when you come into those occasions where you find somebody who's genuinely happy for your own success, that's awesome, because it's like, maybe they don't have to come from a position where it's like, I've been there. They don't necessarily have to have come from the same background or whatever, but if they have the empathy to say like, this is awesome that somebody that I know or this stranger like achieve something that they wanted and they find happiness in the happiness of others. I think that's super cool. And I unfortunately feel like it's really rare because the individualism movement that is super prevalent today, how, you know, everyone's only concerned about like me, it sort of turned into a narrative where it's like, okay, I achieved a goal, and then people will just be like, cool, whatever, but look at mine, like it's way bigger, right? But on those few times when you find somebody who's like, you know, I'm super happy for you, that's awesome, that is the total opposite of stepping on somebody. You know, you can use that as a source of encouragement and building stronger bonds between people who are also pushing for two separate goals instead of being like, screw you, I'm going to use you as a stepping stone to get to my goal instead. So,
and how nice is it when someone who's in your field is able to do that as well? It's the same way as saying it's the same, you know, viewpoint as having someone in your field who maybe does something better than you. You know, rather than having them be like a nemesis or someone that rivals you, you know, you can use their work as a springboard to make yourself better. Mm-hmm. So it's a lot of perspective, you know, like rather than making it an individualistic practice of, I want myself to shine out more than this other person. If you use that person as like a great giant mirror to look at yourself and say, hey, they do these things really well, and maybe I don't do these things super well, but their encouragement means a lot to me. Maybe I can like step up and try and do this even better and use their example as a way to get better.
Yeah.
And that sort of way, like competition becomes
it can be both good and bad.
Yeah, competition doesn't necessarily have to be this negative thing where you're stepping on people, you're trying to best someone in poor spirit, but rather competition becomes like a way to better yourself using people around you who are of like competence or are even better.
Yeah.
You know, like being around, like we said on the podcast about romance, we talked about, you know, you want to like being around people who are also striving because they make yourself better. Yeah. You know, and that's the same thing. You know, you want, even if people are better than you can always spin it into a way that's like, you know, even though they're better than me at this or that, you know, I can learn from this and I can, you know, take their example and just try and work harder. Yeah. And I can like use it to show the faults in myself and then build myself up to be a stronger person.
That's like a strong foundation for anything, I think. Like, yeah. I mean, what is it? It's like, well, I won't call it copying, but they say like imitation is the biggest form of flattery. And to an extent, that's true because, I mean, whenever we listen to music and stuff, we're always like, this piece isn't really original because you can clearly tell whatever like musical inspiration or musical influence they had before, like they clearly drew from it. But it's not like you should put them down for using that. Like they were clearly inspired by somebody who achieved a level of success, right? And they acknowledge that that's a cool thing, and they also wanted to share in that. So the
Kesha Katy Perry thing, that's like,
okay. Well, that's because that's produced
like a
by the same
production
guy.
Though.
That was the same dude, right? In the same
the same guy produced the same song. Yeah, for anyone who doesn't know, if you listen to Kesha's TikTok and Katy Perry's California Girls, they're the exact same song. There's a video on YouTube that if you play it, it plays the two songs at the exact same time. It's just the same damn song.
But I think, you know, I think this is an important you know, clarification to draw. Imitation, you know, is such an important, you know, imitation is the greatest form of flattery in a way that if you use imitation as a springboard for yourself and as a way to explore different sounds that you really like, it becomes such a positive force for creative good. You know, like, and then if we draw a line with music, that type of music especially, imitative music, it sort of falls into a different type of imitation that's more formulaic than it is doing it for the sake of liking it. Yeah. You know, it's a formula that works, and you imitate it because it gets the same amount of attention, and people like it, and so it gets, you know, more money to flow. Yeah. It's a different type of imitation that I think we could, you know, go into a whole nother podcast about, maybe a separate time. Like, the sort of the state of musical affairs today. But imitation, I agree, is such a, you know, to look at someone who's doing something better than you and to imitate and use that as a way to reorient how you're looking at something is such an important part of the success process. Yeah. And this is a great time to talk about, you know, one of the least favorite parts of the whole process, failure, as a reorienting aspect, right?
That's another one of those life quotes that I have on my things is, I didn't even write this. My sister wrote it to me, and it's really simple, but it's pretty profound and it really helps. But it's failure leads to success, you know? I mean, I'm sure a lot of people have heard the whole, like, Michael Jordan didn't make his high school basketball team or whatever. And regardless of whether or not that's true, like, in the end, he came out to be the GOAT of basketball, you know? So there's some merit to the fact that, well, okay, let's say that. Focusing on the big goal, we have the smaller goals, right? And like we said, you have to achieve smaller steps to get to the big goal. But sometimes I don't want to confuse the smaller goals with strictly success. The steps can be independent of being defined by achieving an objective goal. How about that? So if you fail to achieve something, that could very well be a successful step to achieving the greater goal. Is that more clear
Yes.
to say? I don't know how else to say that.
I think it's important because, like in a way that achieving the smaller goal is a way of getting to the larger goal. If you look at failure, if we rebrand failure as something that's less defeating, but more of a necessity, it's like I said in the beginning, it's more about reorienting. If we look at failure metaphorically as a sieve for all of your actions going forward, it sifts out all of the things that really didn't work with your process before.
Yeah, it's a learning process.
Absolutely. And so I think it's super important, if not of the utmost importance, to look at all of your failures, assuming that you did everything you possibly could towards getting towards a goal and it didn't work. You can't cite laziness as if you were lazy during a
then
process,
you're just playing the victim.
Yeah,
right?
that's not putting yourself in the best possible situation. It's like how, my instructor, he's always said, in competition, it doesn't matter if you make a mistake as long as you practice as much as you could and you prepared yourself as much as possible. If you're prepared and you make a mistake, shit happens. You can't control that. But if you don't prepare and you make a bunch of mistakes and you say oh, I'm traumatized because of that, that's on nobody else but you. Yeah. That's not anyone else's fault. So assuming that you did everything you possibly could to make sure that your process could have been had the greatest possibility of being successful and it doesn't work, it's a good time to use this time of, really temporary defeat to look at it and say, these parts of my process are a little bit extraneous. Mm-hmm. And, these things don't need to be there next time. Maybe I can reposition what I really like and parts of my goal so that the next time I try and move forward or take steps in advance, I have a better chance of doing it.
And sometimes I also think that people need to understand that occasionally failure is a necessary step in order to be successful. Like you said, sometimes, most of the time, success doesn't happen overnight. People will hit a wall, but the whole point is that they keep throwing themselves against that wall until it cracks and they get through it. And what is throwing yourself at something repeatedly other than, failing until you break through it, which is at the point when you achieve success. And the whole acknowledging that failure is a step to success can be summarized as, the grind. We all call it that.
The grind.
I'd like to take this moment to talk about, we talk about how you throw yourself against a wall in order to get it to crack.
Yeah.
And then you finally get it. I'd like to talk about, just a great example of this that I recently saw is the story of, Navy SEAL and astronaut Johnny Kim. Have you heard about this guy?
Oh, is that Asian dude? Who's
yeah.
He's got he's so decorated with degrees and achievements. It's ridiculous.
So, okay, wait. So rewind. I'm wrong. It's a different guy.
Oh.
It's another guy who's just like him. He's super decorated. He was the only personnel to be a SEAL member, to be an air control officer, and then also to be an Army Ranger.
Sheesh.
But this guy had so many failures in his first initial steps, and he just kept pushing at it. He kept picking himself to get into what he wanted to do, and he finally did it. And look where he is now. He's super decorated. He's so accomplished. I think he completed an Ironman with a defective heart. He had a heart murmur. He shouldn't Apparently his heart was only working at maybe 60
sizes too small.
60% capacity, and he still did an Ironman. So I can't fucking do an Ironman. Isn't that insane?
Yeah.
So it really points to that sort of self-determination and really trying to push yourself in a very, very genuine way, Yeah. And so I really like the idea of rebranding failure, not as failure has such a poor connotation to it. It's not really failure. It's really just I like
change in circumstance.
Yeah, it's a change in circumstance. It's definitely I like to think of it as a sieve or as a great a sieve of sorts. I can't think of the other word, but something that like takes away all the extra material that didn't work and helps you find a way that does work.
There's an interesting thing that I read recently where people were talking about the merit of rebranding percentages. And yeah. So it's like, what sounds better to you? There's a 90% chance of success or a 10% chance of failure.
I mean, the success one, of course. Yeah.
It's like they switch the words around so that it's like, instead of using the 90% chance of success, if an advertisement put like a 10% chance of failure and they see the word failure, that's all they focus on. And then they completely ignore the other half of the statistic, right?
Success versus failure.
Yeah.
I can see
like, or maybe if you put it in the context of like gambling at a casino, like you are playing like a hold'em hand or like betting on like blackjack or something. They're like, there's a 30% chance that you'll win 100 grand or a 70% chance of failure. If you see 70% chance of failure, it'd be like, well, I'm just going to lose all my money if I go after that. But then if you show all the gamblers, there's a 30% chance of success that you'll double your money. Ooh. They'll be like, ooh, that's 30%. You know, they'll be like 70% chance, whatever. They don't even hear the word failure. They just see 30% chance of doubling your money. Ooh. And that advertising just entices them to take the risk in the first place. So it's kind of manipulative, but it's an interesting thing that I read recently. What are you reading on, Japes?
I am just trying to find, there's this video that I was looking at. It's got a word that, so the word that I was looking for earlier, it wasn't sieve, it's filter. And, I was just reminded of a video that, like, do you know about the Great Filter?
I've heard of it. I don't remember what it is.
The Great Filter is the idea that it's a way of looking at humanity as a whole and how it can survive in the future. So, for instance,
the Great Purge.
The Great Filter is like it's a naturally occurring phenomenon that all living things get to, and then if they can't surpass it, they all die off. And so, like, the whole debate that the video summarizes is that if the barrier is behind us, then we're extremely fortunate because we've already passed the barrier. We're super special as human beings in getting somewhere really important. But if the barrier is in front of us, we're fucked. Because, like,
is it talking about like nowadays?
Yeah, nowadays.
Oh, that's similar to like the Darwin thing.
What
was that Darwinism thing where it's like somebody's
the strong will survive?
Someone's so much of a freaking idiot that's like, and then they go and get killed off somehow, like in some.
It's like they deserved it.
Like they almost freaking deserved it. It's
like the Darwin Award. It's a little bit different.
What's
than
that one called?
The Darwin Award.
The Darwin Award.
Yeah, that's a little bit different. I think, like, so for anyone who's interested, like, it's called The Great Filter. Why Alien Life Would Be Our Doom. It's by a fun channel called Kurzgesagt. It's Kurzgesagt. It's a fun, like, informative channel with great animation. I like to watch it for fun. You know, they do a lot of summarizing, so you have to be aware of that. But it's, in general, really informative. Anyways, so we were talking about...
We should talk about our failures.
Yeah, so we can talk about some of the failures that we've, recently got. Do you want to go first?
Oh, my God. Okay, I don't know if it's recent. No, it's not recent, but I could tell you about a failure. Actually, I don't want to brand it as a failure. I want to brand it as...
Yeah, that's what we said.
Yeah, there you go. I'm going to rebrand it as a motivation factor instead. So this happened, I think, junior year, but I went to a friend's apartment party, right? Some of my friends were just like, hey, you smell good. I was like, cool, thanks. And then I sat down and I talked to this girl, right? And then she's like, you smell really good. If you were any other, this has stuck in my head to this very day because it's like a thorn in my side. It's weird, but she said these words to me verbatim, but it was, you smell really good. If you were any other guy here, I would be ready to go.
That's dirty.
Do you know how fucking horrible I felt at that moment? It was like somebody took a rusty piece of rebar, sharpened it, then heated it to 1,000 degrees, stabbed it into my chest while twisting it, and then bent the rebar that was sticking through my chest halfway, made a ring around it, and then tied a 50-pound weight so it dragged through the bottom of my diaphragm until I choked and bled to death. Like,
it's kind of like
holy shit.
I think that's not even that doesn't even deserve to be a failure though. Because
okay, so here's the thing.
Why would you call it a failure then?
At the moment, in the moment, like when that happened, like it was just like a fucking slap to the face. I was like, I didn't outwardly show it because I was like, okay, whatever. I just continued on the conversation as if nothing happened. But in my head, I was so taken aback that I was just like, I was like,
no, we're talking.
how do you even respond to that? Like, that was just like, if she was drunk, who cares? But like, that's like kind of just a shitty thing to say to somebody. And at the time, like, you know, my ego or whatever, I was pretty hurt. And I thought about it sometime later after letting it leave my system, right? But then I thought about that, and then I was like, all right, well, screw that. I'm going to use that as motivation, because that little bit of anger that I felt from that particular moment, I use that as a driving force to work out really hard. That sounds kind of weird, but like, I do. And one of the things that I've been asked before, I work out sometimes with some friends, and back in school when I was working out with one of them, they were like, why do you work out? And they're like, why do you go to the gym like 4 times a day? I was like, well, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Like, it's so that I look aesthetically pleasing for females so that I can get a girlfriend. Oh, future wife, girlfriend. That's why I'm doing it. You're welcome. But, but like, I seriously use that moment from when I felt hurt from that comment to be a driving force for like, I'm going to achieve this, because I don't know if I've told you guys this, but like, in certain regards or like certain aspects of my life, like, I get super fucking vindicative about things.
Yeah.
So if it's a thing that I'm passionate about and somebody tells me like, you can't do this, my attitude towards that, I just 100% go, fuck you, I'm going to do this. Like, I've heard this.
Or, is that how you got to the diamond?
Yeah, totally. Because all the shit talking that other people were like,
is that how you got to diamond?
No. That was just like a grind. Okay. But like,
I'm trying to get to gold.
I'll put an example on it where it's like, you know, I'm short, I'm 5'3", like, not the tallest guy around, and a lot of times people will be like, oh, he's short, so like he can only have a certain amount of like a body type, and that's like an image that's super perpetuated by like Hollywood and media, where they're like, if you're not tall and have a good body, then like you're not gonna have romantic love, or you're resigned to a typecast where like you're like the funny guy or whatever, right? And I was like, fuck that. I might be 5'3", but I'm still gonna have like, I want a good body. So lo and behold, all of the vitriol from those comments that I'm seeing, I'm pushing against the grain, and I'm saying like, I don't care what other people decide for me. I don't give a shit about your opinion. Like, I'm gonna achieve what I want, and that's why I'm working out so hard, and it's turning out pretty good so far. And you know, like, I haven't quite achieved my goal, and I'm still working on it, but I'm using all of those like negative emotions that I felt from seeing all this bullshit about being tied to a certain image, that I'm just like, you know what? Forget it. I don't care anymore, and I'm only going to focus on me. And that's made my fitness goal journey 100 times easier than it would have been as if I was, you know, just going to the gym every day and I don't really pay attention to it and I just go through the motions. Like, if I have a spurring driving force behind what I want to do, it makes achieving my goal and the drive and the grind that much easier. So
yeah, I think that's a great way of like of spinning a situation that you feel is not in control of, like that you feel is a lot more perpetuated by people around you in a way that's more positive towards you, in a way that you have control over.
Dude, oh my God. Telling you that story though, like my my heart rate just shot up, like just thinking, even to the, like,
that's dirty. I don't
I know, like, would say that. I don't let it bother. It's like, I'm not like depressed about it or anything, but like, but like I get heated about it. But like, I think
in general it's just like, you know, that's not something you really want to say to someone. I mean, even for even if it's your good friends too,
was
it's
it like some douchey sorority girl?
Well, I mean, like, I know the person, like, I forgive them, whatever, but
well, like,
I'm separating what they said from the person for the sake of the motivation behind it, you know?
Yeah, and I think it's just like, it's important for other people to be a lot more sensitive to stuff like that as well. It's like, it sort of throws you under the bus by saying something like that.
Luckily, like, I'm hard-skinned enough and self-aware enough that I like didn't let that destroy me internally, and I instead, like I said, spun it into a good thing. So,
you know, and it's things like that where even really small little instances of discouragement can really seem like detrimental or really or, you know, just horrible to look at. You know, it can really push someone down if they didn't have the same mindset as you. I've definitely experienced things where like someone will say something in passing and it definitely just like hits me in a weird spot and like it'll take me out for like, a day or so. It's really weird. It really is not good for like your personal space sometimes.
Yeah.
I think my example of like a personal like defeat. So like I'm a musician, and one thing that I've always expected is just to be a great musician at all times and to always have like, always be like hot shit. I've always wanted that. I've always wanted that sort of validation. I used to get it a lot. And I think that it sort of fed it fed my ego a lot. I'm a good pianist. And so like,
you are, dude. You're the best pianist I know.
And so like, when you get to that level, there's just a lot of good musicians everywhere. And it's super discouraging to see like, so many good musicians. And like one thing that I kept in reservation is just like, what if playing the piano isn't like the one thing I want to do all the time? And it really hit me because like I've got friends who like, bless them. They've got this great motivation to play the piano at any given moment. It's their love and they do it all the time without much complaining. And then there's me, and like I sometimes just really struggle to get to the piano. I really struggle to enjoy it. And so like, this led to a lot of self like introspection and like checking on really like what really made me happy. And so like I made the switch to go with more of an academic musical setting while also playing piano and like, still focusing on it, but really putting my attention into an academic idea. And so that to me was really tough because like when all is piano for a long time, it's kind of like getting away from it and shifting your orientation towards something else seems like a defeat. It seemed like I was giving up on something, and because I didn't feel like I was good enough, or I didn't feel like I had it in me to do it. It was really bad because it just felt so, it made me feel like I wasn't a real musician to try and go into something more academic oriented. It was almost like a cop out. But so like after, I have great friends, you guys are among them, and like
Thanks,
other friends who keep me up. And so like just being around that sort of mentality just allowed me to think about, this isn't a failure. It's not me copping out to something that would be easier for me. It's more like I'm refining how I look at what my interests are and what type of success I want to get in the future. And I'm reorienting how I'm looking to so for me, like it was a compromise. It was like, I really like doing both of these things, but what do I reasonably see myself doing in the future for a longer period of time? What's going to make me happiest, and what's going to hit all of my tick marks for what a successful life means to me. Right. And so really a defeat like that, which kind of comes into like an existential idea of defeat. I was able to take it and turn it around into something that, I'm driving towards a goal now. It's like it's a life-changing experience almost. Dan, what about you? Like,
failures?
What's a failure that you've experienced that you might have like reoriented, or something that
Any
was
like
tough?
big outstanding things that you remember?
Yeah. What's something that stands out to you right away?
Dude,
He's losing in lane. No,
I'm
you're
actually
jungling.
playing pretty well right now. I just feel like I don't know. I'm boring. I guess that's how.
Boring.
I don't know. I just feel like I don't know. I'm dull, kind of like I don't talk that much, and then people want to be interested. That's how you get to a conversation point, and that's how people get comfortable with you because you're speaking constantly, and then they get used to your voice, and then they just get more comfortable with you as a person because they have more exposure. And I feel like I don't get people that comfortable point as often as for social stuff. But yeah, if, I guess like talking more is something that I could probably improve upon.
But so even this is a great...
And then, not doing that and not working on that is something that, like being stagnant with how I am.
Yeah.
And then not continually making progress. I feel like I'm just being lazy. So I guess that could be considered a failure.
But so,
But like at least you still recognize though that like that's something that you're actively working on. And like that in itself is like the first step to achieving that goal of your goal of being, I guess, more socially adept or whatever you want to do with it, right?
And this comes at a really interesting time when we're, when we've already shot that episode about conversation.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
It's kind of super.
Yeah, you should listen to that.
Super opportunity.
It's not out yet, but it'll be out by the time we do this one.
Yeah. But we had a really great conversation about conversation in itself, and we talked about like how we made people feel comfortable in conversation, how we got people to open up and to develop good relationships, and that's really the basis of all conversation. If I can just relay some of that information from there briefly, just for you right now, one part about conversation is that people will talk a lot if you ask them. One of my favorite documentaries is by the guy who made the film The French Connection, which is a great film. he made another film called The Thin Blue Line. And it's about the police force. It's about how this director was able to get like certain witnesses to talk and make them feel like they were part of a super serious documentary when it was actually a little less serious. And,
like
and
a Sacha Baron Cohen.
kind of like that. He was able to prompt situations using his personality. But one thing that he said was that people really want to talk. And if you ask the right questions, or you just ask questions in general, you let them talk and you be silent, they will want to fill that space. And so, maybe like don't think about you need to fill space. Think about like, I need to set the platform for other people so that they can feel more comfortable to talk more. So that's like, another way of just taking a situation and spinning it into like more goal oriented, less defeatist, But I mean, you're already in that track. Having this motivation to want to be better at that is already taking something that you might feel is a weakness in your personality and wanting to be better. So like,
yeah,
it's already admirable and you're already at that spot,
Like some people they'll just complain and then they don't realize that like they can do something to fix the problem. And then that's like falling into not necessarily victimization. Well, it kind of is victimization, right? Because if you're complaining about something that you clearly have some control over that you can fix, then it's like, well, why don't you just do that? And I feel like, I mean, I'm not going to say like, a person who doesn't do that is better than the other person, because like that's happened to everybody. Everyone, has their moments of complaining, but they don't realize that, they can change something about it. And having the self-awareness to know that, you can take these steps is super good.
Yeah.
And it's a characteristic that I think is one of the things that defines a successful person.
Sure.
Yeah, right?
I think like having that, what was I about to say? Like having that sort of idea of victimization, like it really spurs, like it doesn't spur you on to do anything. And victimization is a part of that process that doesn't help you at all. And I think something super important towards the overall success process is understanding that like if something's really shitty, like the first thing you can do is always try and identify those things that you can fix right away.
Yeah.
Little things that will make your life easier, or little parts of the puzzle that need to come together first. Once you get those things under control, you can sort of start branching out, right?
Mm-hmm.
I really like how, we've used certain personal failures or personal defeats as a way of creating long-standing goals. And I think that it's a good time to like talk about now what our long-term goals are, because we really haven't given that we haven't laid those out just yet. And I think like now that we've talked about like how we can go through success, how we define success into objective and subjective success. I think now it's
what our long-term goals
yeah,
are?
let's talk about some of our long-term goals. Let's go in the same order. You go first.
Okay. Well, yeah. One of them for sure is, I think that's something, it's a goal that everyone wants is, financial stability, financial, whatever we said your thing was.
What is it?
Fiscal, financially fiscal. Yeah. But yeah, I want to be financially secure in my future. I took like a personal finance class, and that taught me a whole lot about the steps I can take to do that. Right now, like I've been telling you guys for the past couple of months, like, the whole job struggle and all that stuff. But I mean, I'm actively taking steps to achieve that, right?
Yeah.
So that's one of my long-term goals. Another long-term goal, I already said it, but like the whole fitness thing, like I said, I'm not exactly the tallest guy around, but I decided somewhere along the road that I should, I can at least have a good body. So that's what I'm doing. And I don't know, those are kind of the two major ones I have for myself right now. Anything you got, Dan?
I want to get to gold.
Hey man, that's a long-term goal.
It is a long-term goal.
I was like, I want to hit diamond, and then I did it after a while.
That's
and now
short-term for me.
I don't do it anymore because it's...
I think what we're going to realize, going into these like long-term goals is that the long-term goals are essentially just like more sophisticated short-term goals.
I mean, it kind of is, right? Yeah, like you said, like inflating the smaller term goals.
Yeah. It's just like taking those small goals and then like taking your perspective way back. It's like how looking at a scene, like a movie reel scene, and then looking at the entire reel in general. You can't make a whole movie without having the individual scenes, right? So it's all a process. Like for mine, I've got like getting a good job is part of it, and that's like, part of being like part of doing smaller steps right now, like, getting a good GRE score, or like not procrastinating or stuff like that. Making enough money to be comfortable and to like sate my desire for like more material things, or something just like for me to live comfortably really needs that. It necessitates like a certain style of living, I guess. I don't need it, I guess, but if
you want it, and you're working
want
towards
it, it's a
it. Yeah.
goal, and that's part of being more fiscally responsible for like
Fiscally financial,
financially
of
fiscal.
course.
I have like have my work be influential and feeling fulfilled, and those two things are the last two things that I have that are super important. The idea of fulfillment and success, and then also the sort of rogue third definition of success that I like to call like a legacy of success.
Oh yeah,
So I'll explain it. Essentially, quantitative and experiential success, objective and subjective success, respectively, they sort of work on the fact that you are there to experience them. But, if we take a specific example, like the artist who makes something and doesn't experience any success, whether objective or subjective, and then dies and then someone finds their work and loves it, that you'd consider them to be a successful artist posthumously. And there's no other way of like...
Dude, Mac Miller just died.
Yeah.
Yeah, rest in peace.
Rest in peace, Mac Miller.
That's crazy.
Aretha was gone last month. Mac Miller this month.
The guy from We Came as Romans died.
What?
The singer.
Oh my God! What happened?
He died. Didn't you
He
hear?
No shit.
he overdosed, I believe.
What?
I believe he overdosed.
Oh man, same with Mac Miller. But so like,
And then you start listening to him. That's the weird thing, man.
Well,
I haven't listened to as much XXXTentacion or freaking Mac Miller ever since they died.
But so that's a weird thing too. Like when someone dies, it sort of like pushes a popularity in their work. I think that's definitely a phenomenon from like nowadays. You wouldn't get that from like older times when you didn't have such easy access to technology, right?
Yeah.
But so like, what about it would be more akin to the SoundCloud rapper who didn't have anything good or didn't have any acclaim, and then he died, and someone discovered his page and it was full of gold. You know, like it's like how do you I guess talk about that success? And it's more about their success is a legacy type of success, something that everyone else experienced except for them. And I mean, one caveat to this, as was pointed out to me earlier, was that, certain people have both already. Like you can have all three of them at any given time. But I think, like the president, like President Obama, when he was president, he's got a legacy.
Yeah.
He has a successful legacy. He's got like quantitative legacy. He's the fucking president. And he has like all of these degrees and whatever. You can say that he's successful and he's the fucking president. That's like experiential in itself, you know? So like certain situations lead you to having all three of them or however many you want of types of success. But I think like in order to be fair to, most general types of success, we have to consider legacy as part of it. And you can actively be working towards a legacy of success while you're living. But, just in the case that you die without having any acclaim, this covers that.
Well, that's one of the things, too, that people commonly put as a life goal, right? Like they want the generation after them to be either equal or more successful than they were. And I think that we should be thankful to our parents for that. We were put in very, like, all things considered, however much we complain about whatever issues we got, like, we got a pretty damn good start on life, like, we got pretty good suburban middle-class lives or whatever, and, like, we're fortunate enough that we're not the dickhead type of people that take everything for granted. Like, we know where we came from, and we know where we want to go, but we also know what was put into to get to this point for us to even do that. What's a bigger example than the fact that the United States is built, literally its whole legacy was built on immigrants, right?
Yeah.
For example, my mom, my whole family other than me who was born here, they all came from the Philippines. And
Your sisters too?
Yeah, they were born there too.
Wow.
My grandpa, my grandma, my mom, my aunts and uncles, they all came here because they were in search for a better life, not only for them, but that like trickled down. And my mom said somewhere along the lines, like, she wants a good life for me too. And I'm super thankful that, she did all the work that she did to this point and in the future to give me like the start and resources that are available to me nowadays to achieve the goals that, I have either set for myself or want to achieve. Otherwise, all are in part due to the effort that she put in. And I think that acknowledging that is something that people should do a little bit more of on day to day. So say everyone call your parents or whatever and tell them thank you.
And you love them.
Yeah, and you love them.
Right.
Because they deserve it. They did something to help get you to where you are. So
yeah, and that's great because in my notes about how I defined a legacy of success, that was actually the other example I had next to artists who died and didn't have it.
We're on the same page.
Yeah, very nice, same wavelength, as Peter likes to say.
Yeah. Wait, oh my god, it was like top 10 most repeated words were like vibe, chemistry, and wavelength. He's gonna come back to hear that, and we're just gonna roast him for it.
Oh no, we'll have to roast him. He's gonna be back. I think he's gonna be back really soon. Okay. Like maybe next week. So we should definitely hold another one next week. Yeah. Anyways, no. So exactly like that. Like that type of success, really. It's super selfless, and it's not. It's either really selfless or it's so true that you can't force it. Yeah. And it's unfortunate that not a lot of people get that recognition that they want. But I think that creating a legacy definitely ends up in being successful for a lot of certain things. I mean, in the same way that your mom came here with all of your relatives and they built this life here, and they've got you, and you're super educated, you're really cool. I
got a pretty good lease on life because of everything they did.
Yeah, and I owe a lot of it to both of my grandparents. Both sets of my grandparents coming here, really working their ass off to afford a life that was close to family, giving us the best opportunities that they could muster. And so that legacy lives on really well. And I can only hope to do the same thing. Right. Yeah. And I guess that doesn't have to be a type of success that you want to have at all times, but I want it. And so, yeah. And so I guess this plays into the last and final point of success and how we talk about it, but, fulfillment. And does success, necessarily equal fulfillment? Are the two mutually exclusive, or can you have both of them? What are your thoughts on that?
At the very basic level, you can almost say fulfillment is just the chemical reaction in your brain that says it makes you feel good. It's tying it to dopamine. So for me, it's almost hand in hand with successful, which, doesn't necessarily, like you said, doesn't have to be the case. But I think I could say that a lot of times fulfillment is, for me personally, being happy in the moment. So I could get fulfillment for just having a good meal today. And, that's some fulfillment on some level for me. But I can also say that I will be fulfilled once I achieve something in the future. But I sort of have to define those two as different types of fulfillment, because fulfillment in the current time, today or right now, for me is almost synonymous with happiness, and fulfillment in the future pertaining to a goal is almost what I would put as success. So it's it's almost a crossroads, but yeah, I don't know. That's how I go about it.
Dan, do you have any thoughts about, fulfillment and what it means to be fulfilled?
Not yet.
I mean, it's a really
this
is our philosophizing 101 that we're doing right now, and it's it's not an easy to answer thing. Yeah, it's not an easy thing to answer, right?
No,
you don't,
not at all.
You don't necessarily have to have an answer to that, because unfortunately or fortunately, sometimes it's a thing that not everyone knows how to define or knows that they're experiencing it in the moment. So
fulfillment is a really interesting thing for me. I think of fulfillment as almost synonymous with, well, not synonymous, but inextricably tied to your purpose. When you're fulfilling something, what are you fulfilling? You're fulfilling some sort of predetermined purpose that you've given to yourself, right? Okay. And so I think fulfillment is such a weird goal to have if we're talking about goals and success. I would almost consider fulfillment a goal. This intangible goal it's almost like this intangible goal that we all try to get to. And for me, I really like how you said fulfillment can be both it's also happiness, but it's also a goal oriented thing, But fulfillment for me really comes down to fulfilling purpose, which is almost like ending the work that you're meant to do. And, you can go your whole life trying to find the work you're meant to do and then never complete it. Yeah. And so I think fulfillment's a really touchy subject, because, it really depends on how you view, what happens with fulfillment. whether or not fulfillment is finishing the work that you're meant to do, or if fulfillment is only finding happiness and being, experiential, or if fulfillment is like doing things until you die, like doing things until you physically cannot do them anymore. And so like, I guess fulfillment really like lies under a much more experiential idea of success, Fulfillment as a goal really depends on a subjective idea of what we're trying to get to and sort of how we achieve a predetermined idea of success, right? And so like the two work together in such an interesting way because success can be defined by like how we like what type of values we have, and fulfillment is sort of like the manifestation of all of those values into something tangible. Ooh. But something tangible and yet something we can't really trace immediately, Mm-hmm. And like you can be fulfilled on so many different levels. If you manage to hit all your macros today, like you're fulfilled, I feel good about myself. I feel fulfilled in my day's work that I did something like that.
And my stomach might not be fulfilled.
True. You might not even be filled. You might still be hungry.
I'm not full or filled.
No. But like, or if your longtime goal is to get a degree from Harvard and you get it, you could be fulfilled. But I don't necessarily think that fulfillment is ever quelled. I think fulfillment, it definitely just happens on and on and on. As much as you live, as much as your like goals evolve with you and your age, like fulfillments will evolve with them like 10 times. It's almost exponential. The more you fulfill your own successes, the more your fulfillment and successes become difficult to achieve, And so I guess fulfillment isn't much of an achievement as much as it is just like the continuation of work and the continuation of more goals and the continuation of like creating more and more legacy. It's a weird way of looking at it that definitely deserves some, introspective thought on how we look at it. But it's, like I said, I always think of it as the manifestation of these values that create success.
That's a pretty profound way of looking at it.
Yeah, and I mean, it might not even mean anything. But like, I think it's important to think about fulfillment. Especially now that we're at this juncture in life where we're at a place where
we're all like trying to figure out where to go or what to do next. So.
Yeah, and like being goal oriented and having this idea of success and fulfillment is important because it helps us orient ourselves in a way that helps puts us on the best path.
Yeah.
And, we talked about, creating small opportunities for ourselves and taking small steps. And I think that like, if this podcast episode has done anything for anyone listening, I hope that we've all thought about orienting ourselves in a way that best suits our overall desires.
Yeah. This is like kind of a therapeutic talk as much as it is for us, as it might just be like a lecture for whoever's listening, So.
Yeah. Like, and, be advised, like, I think the big things to get from this are that success is never like what anyone else tells you it is. Mm-hmm. Success comes in small steps over a long period of time.
It's in waves. It's a flowing and a pushing and ebbing and flowing thing. So
success involves failure or defeat, and trying to reshape and redefine what that experience was to you in a specific way. And it also depends on thinking about fulfillment and what would make you fulfilled right now, and how that can evolve in the future. Inevitably, it's important to have a great support system, like we all here at the podcast have. I know that I can call anyone in this group and be like, "Hey, I need some advice."
Yeah.
Like, I need to pick me up. And so, thank your friends. Like, keep your friends close. Always check in, and always, be that sort of environment that pushes each other forward. The only way that we all get better is if we all push each other, right? That's the type of environment that I would think leads to a better like overall group. If we're all successful, then it's better for everyone. Yeah.
Wow, way to give everyone an existential crisis.
There you go, everyone. Happy sweet dreams on that one.
That's pretty good, dude.
All the time, man.
What?
JP.
What? Giving people existential crisis?
Well, maybe not crisis, but it's just like the profound thoughts.
Got to think of them. They're
That's
important.
Just how it is. That's just how it be.
Mm-hmm.
People don't think it be like it is, but it do.
But it do. You
Thanks,
can tell
Black Science, man.
What's that other meme that's like, Like, you can tell it is the way it is. You can tell
you can tell it, by the way. That's the...
Yeah, what is that?
It's pretty neat. It's like some forest, like, nature walk guy.
I've never...
That's pretty neat.
I've never been able to, like, recall that entire meme correctly.
I'll show you the video later.
Yeah, I gotta look at it. Yeah.
Is that it?
Yeah, I mean...
Are we done?
I ask everyone, or implore everyone, really, if you've got any other ideas about, you know, different types of success, or, you know, what are even your long and short-term goals, like,
What
share.
is our successive legacy other than this podcast? Right?
I mean, we're creating the
We're
successive
doing it.
legacy right
We
now.
already said that we wanted it to be like a time capsule,
And here
so
it is.
we'll be able to look at this and think either we'll go to that shower thought where it's your future self is talking shit about you, or we'll be like, you know what, this is pretty still cool.
I always like that response that's like, well, I'm going to ruin his fucking life.
Jokes on him. I'm gonna fucking ruin his life. Yeah.
Yeah.
Screw you, future Aaron. You're a douchebag.
You're all a part of our time capsule now, everyone. We love you for that.
Okay.
Yeah, see ya.
We still don't have a sign off or anything.
Yeah, I mean, we should think of one. Dan, you got a good idea for a sign-off at this point?
No.
No?
Does anybody even listen? That's the... Not
Yeah,
yet.
surprisingly.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually.
We could say something like, this is us signing off.
Ooh. Wait, let me have my automaton.
Your automaton. Oh, how about let's make an automaton sign-off with this?
What should I do?
Something going lower.